From Judaism, Christianity and Islam to Hinduism and Taoism to Native American and goddess religions, each offers images of the sacred web into which we are woven. We are called children of one God and members of one body. We are called drops in the ocean of God. We are pictured as jewels in the net of Indra. We inter-exist. Words by Joanna Macy. Welcome. Welcome all of you here in the church and all of you joining us online today. Welcome all friends and visitors. I'm going to begin by lighting our chalice flame, as is our custom, as a symbol of our free religious faith. Those of you with candles at home may like to join me. I hope you're having better luck than I am. I don't know where that went. And I'd like to begin with prayer. First of all, a prayer from the Unitarian Universalist Jacob Trapp. Grant us to see things that bear the mark of the eternal, the beauty that lures with loving kindness, the transmutation of suffering into wisdom and understanding, the divine impulse given and received. Give us to cherish life's perishable beauty, that it may be imperishably present to us. And may we so pass through the things that are fleeting as to be richer in the things that endure. May it be so. God of all creation, we give thanks for this opportunity to spend time together in this sacred space. This opportunity for each one of us to refresh our spirits, to remind ourselves of our own truth, to reconnect with the very ground of our being. God of life and love, we bring into our awareness those we love who are suffering, those who are ill or in anguish, those who need our care. We ask that they know in their souls the great comfort and gentle balm of your compassion. We too ask for loving kindness. May we give it freely and accept it with grace. May we know the loving kindness of all creation, and may it radiate from us into all parts of the cosmos. Divine Spirit, we give thanks for our time together. May it console and restore us. May it energize and inspire us. Amen. and welcome. The theme of this service is why do we suffer? And it's one of those imponderable questions we ask ourselves, and many have asked it before us and will in the future. But our first hymn, which I invite you to join in, is number 173, and it's called Though Gathered Here to Celebrate, My Spirit's Burning Low. Now, your spirit may not be burning low this morning, but I expect for some of you, your spirit may be burning a little low for one reason or another. And so we sing this song for you. Let's sing hymn number 173. The words will come up on the screen. Thank you and welcome, and it's lovely to see some little ones joining us this morning. We're going to, as we often do, have a story, which our stories come from different wisdom traditions. So we do draw on a range of different faith and other traditions. And the story this morning does come from the Buddhist tradition. And I'd like to thank Kay Millard, who I think is on Zoom this morning, for pointing this version out to me. It comes from a book you may have come across called When Bad Things Happen to Good People by Rabbi Harold Kushner. But he has retold a version of this story in his book. And welcome back to our church, Mary, who we haven't seen in person for a little while. We do see more often on Zoom. Lovely to have you here, Mary. Thank you.
There is an old Chinese tale about the woman whose only son died. In her grief, she went to the holy man and said, "What prayers, what magical incantations do you have to bring my son back to life?" Instead of sending her away or reasoning with her, he said to her, "Fetch me a mustard seed from a home that has never known sorrow. We will use it to drive the sorrow out of your life." The woman set off at once in search of that magical mustard seed. She came first to a splendid mansion, knocked at the door and said, "I'm looking for a home that has never known sorrow. Is this such a place? It is very important to me." They told her, "You've certainly come to the wrong place," and began to describe all the tragic things that had recently befallen them. The woman said to herself, who is better able to help these poor unfortunate people than I, who have had misfortune of my own?" She stayed to comfort them, and then went on in her search for a home that had never known sorrow. Wherever she turned, in hovels and in palaces, she found one tale after another of sadness and misfortune. Ultimately, she became so involved in ministering to other people's grief that she forgot about her quest for the magical mustard seed, never realizing that in fact it had begun to drive the sorrow out of her own life.
Thank you, Mary. And just two short readings, one from Tielhard de Chardin, the Catholic theologian and geologist, who writes, "Our faith imposes on us a right and a duty to throw ourselves into the things of the earth. Our consciousness, rising above the growing but still much too limited circles of family, country, and race, shall finally discover that the only truly natural and real human unity is in the spirit of the earth. No evolutionary future awaits anyone except in association with everyone else. We are one, after all, you and I. Together we suffer. Together exist. And forever will recreate each other." And the second short reading is by Bryan Stevenson, who's an American lawyer and social justice activist, who has written, "We are all broken by something. We have all hurt someone, and we have all been hurt. We all share the condition of brokenness, even if our brokenness is not equivalent. The ways in which I have been hurt and have hurt others are different from the ways others have suffered and caused suffering. But our shared brokenness connects us." Our second hymn is in our green books, and it's number 60. It's called "Trust in Life." We do not seek a shallow faith, a God to keep us free from trial and error, harm and death, wherever we may be. Number 60.
We do not see
We're going to come into a time of reflection, but I'd like to share some words with you by Cynthia Frado. And she has written something called Psalm for the Wintered Soul. To the weaver of molecules, the spinner of stars, the impulse that gives birth to the universe, to the earth, to me. In the deepest, darkest night of my wintered soul, I wrap myself in the blanket of my sadness and grief, pain and suffering, doubts and concerns, fears and questions, and look out from my wondering eyes toward the light that dares to penetrate the layers of blindness that surround me. So obscured is my vision because of the trials and tribulations of this life, that it is your fractal rays of possibility and hope that I seek to inspire me, to emerge from this cocoon that holds me. Each luminescent ray of love and hope and possibility is that catalyst which I need to transform my thoughts and emotions into fuel for that inner fire, which will dispel the darkness of my night, which will help me to see more clearly the embers of love and hope and possibility that dwell within me. Spring will come again, this I know, and I will be ready for my emergence and unfolding, that I might soar ever higher into my own becoming, in the light of my own transcendence, reawakened, renewed, reborn. Amen. And we're going to have a short silence and then some music. And, silence is something that goes on within us, just as much as without us. And listening to whatever sounds we hear, whether it's sounds outside the room, sounds inside the room, sounds of our own breathing and our own heartbeats. This is all part of being present in the moment. So there's no need to resist any of the sounds that you may hear at this time. Just let them be, enjoy them. Use this opportunity just to be here, exactly as it is. I loved seeing you dancing at the back there. That was beautiful. In some versions of that song, there is a chorus in it that is Dance With Me. In fact, this version doesn't include those words, but you did it anyway. It was lovely. So I have been thinking about suffering, as one does from time to time, maybe at this time of year as well. And just because it's one of those subjects, isn't it? Why do we suffer? And how do we make sense of it? And so I think the first thing I want to say is that whatever I say is offered with humility, because I don't know the answers, and I'm guessing you don't either, and I'm not sure anyone does really, but I'm just going to offer what my thoughts are, and please feel free to disagree. But I hope that there'll be something in what I say that might prompt further thought and inquiry from you. So maybe just to start with the obvious, which is, I think we all understand that at a very basic level, some suffering is unavoidable. In fact, it's essential for our survival. So the pain I feel when I accidentally put my hand on the hot plate, which I seem to do from time to time, is unpleasant for sure, but it certainly makes me move it quickly and prevents any further damage. And don't our children learn as they go along what to avoid and what's safe and what isn't safe, partly through pain? We hope not too much, but it's performing a function for us. So in that very basic sense, pain and suffering are built in to our DNA, prompting us to respond appropriately when we're hungry or thirsty, cold or sick. There is actually a condition, it's very rare. It's a rare condition, what's the word? Congenital, that's it. Condition in which people don't feel pain. And that, of course, is very dangerous, because you just don't know when you've trod on something or you've cut yourself even. You won't necessarily know. So to that extent, we are grateful that we can feel pain. We also, of course, we know, in theory anyway, we know we're mortal. We're not necessarily at ease with that, but we do know it. And we love. We all love something, somebody, which inevitably means that we also grieve. If grief is the loss of something loved, we will grieve. And arguably, the more we love, the more we grieve. And these are difficult truths about the nature of being human. Death and grief are challenging, but we do understand that they come with the territory of being human. We know that ultimately there's no avoiding them. And if you're anything like me, you probably cause some of your own suffering too. If you give yourself a hard time, ever, if you have a critical voice in your head, and if you get too attached to things being a certain way, then, well, that's going to make life tough in all sorts of ways, which it does, doesn't it? I think we all give ourselves a hard time at times. We all resist things that change and things that don't turn out the way we hoped. That's inevitable too. But I think what is most difficult to make sense of is the suffering that seems, that feels random and pointless, cruel even. The kind of suffering that may creep up on us or may come completely out of the blue, which doesn't appear to have a purpose, that doesn't feel part of the natural order of things. It's the kind that resonates with Jesus' words on the cross when he cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" That howl of anguish, which perhaps we have all felt at one time or another. At its heart, that feeling, horrible feeling of abandonment, of incredulity, of why me, or why them? What have I done to deserve this? What have they done to deserve this? It isn't fair. Those feelings. I think they're the hardest for us all to make sense of. Maybe it's a life-changing accident or illness. Maybe it's the death of a loved one too soon. Maybe it's a betrayal. Maybe it's abuse. Maybe it's being caught up in a war or famine or a flood. Whatever it may be that knocks us for six, turns our world upside down, shakes our faith perhaps. How do we make sense of those things? And where is God in them, if at all? That's my question. And I think at such times it's certainly difficult to square belief in a God that is portrayed often to us as both all-loving and all-powerful. If God loves me, why would he or she or it allow such a tragedy to happen to me? I know some people would say, well, everything has a purpose, everything happens for a reason. We just can't see the bigger picture. And though I suppose that could be true, and sometimes appears true in retrospect, sometimes, I must say that personally, I don't find that very helpful. The biggest trauma in my own family's life was the severe and life-limiting disability of my younger brother. I think anyone telling my mother that there was some purpose or some reason for his and her suffering would only have made her feel greater shame and distress than she already did. That she and he were somehow being punished for something they had no knowledge of. It would have felt, I think, like just more abandonment, even if offered by well-meaning people. Again, you may disagree, but that's how I feel about it. The problem, I think, of suffering and evil is one reason people give up on believing in God altogether. It just doesn't compute. But I'm personally not prepared to give up on an all-loving God. That is the God of my understanding. But I can let go of an all-powerful one. And the reason for me is that this miraculous and astounding and awe-inspiring universe can only exist, surely, because it follows the laws of its own nature. There's no choice really about that. It has to follow the laws of physics, of chemistry, of biology. Gravity, it's there. And these laws have consequences that, I'm going to say, perhaps controversially, I don't know, that even God can't interfere with, because they are the very fabric of creation. Creation is so incredible, and so much of it is so beautiful and joyful and loving and astounding, so much of the time. But of course, we are also vulnerable and complicated. We are flawed. We are broken. We can love and we can hurt. And we are part of an unimaginably complex web of existence that is so very much bigger than just us. We live alongside, we coexist, we are wholly interdependent, not only with each other, but with all forms of life and all of its elements. And that's the deal of being alive in this world. So bacteria and fungi and viruses are essential for the whole ecosystem. But of course, they can also make us sick. We are subject to the movements of the stars and the planets, the tides and the winds, the storms and the droughts. The sun that warms us can also burn us. The rain that waters us can also drown us. In this glorious and awesome and sometimes frightening kaleidoscope, life and things tumble and rumble along in ways that are not under our own control, and they inevitably fall out at times in ways that cause us immense distress and pain and loss and confusion, in ways that simply can't just be reversed or prevented. I would say even by God, in whom all this exists. However much we may wish and pray with all our hearts that they could be. And I would say that when tragedy strikes, it is not some deliberate act of God. It is not punishment. It is not callous. It simply is just what has happened. But that can be an extremely hard pill to swallow. But for me, where God and love and light and spirit come in is what happens next. The God of my understanding weeps with us in our pain and does not forsake us, though it may certainly feel that way. Help comes, like green shoots finding their way through cracks in a pavement. The light begins to seep in. We let the pain be the pain, but we're still not alone. We can ask for help, we can ask for guidance, for strength and courage from God and from the universe and from those around us. And most often, it comes. It comes in the form of other people who care. It comes from other people who have suffered themselves and know something of what we might be feeling. It comes from those who are willing to listen and support. It comes from those who nurse us or counsel us or tend or treat us. It comes from those who take care of the practical things while we can't. Cook us a meal or go for a walk with us. Clear up the mess, sort out the paperwork, whatever it is that needs doing, or help us to do it ourselves. For me, God comes in those people and in the patience and generosity, the kindness and the empathy of others. Spirit enters in the silence. Peace may come in prayer or meditation, or just in moments, glimpses of beauty. Love comes in a smile or a hug or a kind word. The pain may remain, but the light has ways of returning too. And what we make of it in the end, what it means in the end, is what we make of it. What we make of our lives despite or even because of our troubles. It returns when we find we're able to give back with more compassion and more understanding and more gentleness and kindness than perhaps we had before. It comes back in the way we live, true to ourselves, honestly, with as much love as we can muster, for all who are broken, whatever way and in whatever extent that takes place. I'm going to finish with some words which I've always found incredibly moving, and I think I may have shared here some years before, but if I have, they're worth repeating. They were written by the author Cheryl Strayed. She used to write an agony column years ago now. It was called Dear Sugar. Nobody knew who she was at the time. And she used to give the most extraordinary, I think, replies to people. And this one that I'm not going to share the whole thing with you, I'm going to share a section of what she wrote to a man whose only son had been killed by a drunk driver who drove through a red traffic light. And he signed himself to her in his letter, Living Dead Dad. And I'll try and read it. You are not grieving your son's death because his death was ugly and unfair. You're grieving it because you loved him, truly. The beauty in that is greater than the bitterness of his death. It's your life, the one you must make in the obliterated place that's now your world, where everything you used to be is simultaneously erased and omnipresent. The obliterated place is equal parts destruction and creation. It is pitch black and bright light. It is water and parched earth. It is mud and it is manna. The real work of deep grief is making a home there. You go on by doing the best you can. You go on by being generous. You go on by being true. You go on by being and offering comfort to others who can't go on. And you go on by allowing the unbearable days to pass and allowing the pleasure in other days. You go on by finding a channel for your love and another for your rage. I'd give it all back in a snap, but the fact is, my own grief taught me things. It showed me shades and hues I couldn't otherwise have seen. It required me to suffer and it compelled me to reach. Your grief has taught you too, living dead dad. Your son was your greatest gift in his life, and he is your greatest gift in his death too. Receive it. Let him be your most profound revelation. Create something of him. Make it beautiful. Wise advice, for me anyway. To do what we can to make something beautiful out of whatever befalls us. So let's sing our final hymn, which is one, as Steve said, I think I like this one because I do pick it quite often. It's We Sing a Love That Sets All People Free, and it's number 195 in the purple hymn books. We sing a love. do sit. I'm just going to close with a prayer that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's called the Serenity Prayer, and it is one of the wisest and shortest, actually, prayers. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And wisdom to know the difference.